Axwell was on routine patrol near the Andromeda border when a red signal suddenly appeared on the cockpit screen. The spaceship's AI reported receiving an emergency signal along with low-level radioactive traces. The source of the signal was Ganymede 4 Colony, a place once used for scientific research but abandoned years ago. "Looks like the old ghost colony's in trouble," Axwell muttered as he steered his ship toward the signal's origin. Outside, the massive debris drifting in space and the scorched heaps of metal were clear signs of a catastrophe. As he got closer to the colony, the extent of the devastation became even more apparent, indicating that a massive battle had taken place here. The shattered buildings, collapsed walls, and exploded energy reactors showed that this once lively place had now turned into a cold graveyard. When Axwell pinpointed the exact source of the signal, he found a half-buried capsule near the center of the colony. The capsule was heavily damaged and partially embedded in the ground. Some electronic systems were still active, struggling to keep the contents alive with a weak power supply. When he heard a faint crying sound coming from the capsule, he couldn't believe his ears. Opening the emergency panel on the capsule, Axwell analyzed the situation inside. The display showed life signs for 3 small alien babies who looked identical to each other. The triplets were tiny creatures with fluffy, pink skin and were equipped with tubes that helped them adapt to different atmospheric conditions. But the power source was about to run out. Axwell quickly sprang into action. He took out the tools he had on hand to release the manual seals and carefully lifted the capsule's covers. As soon as he opened it, cold air rushed out. The temperature inside the capsule was near freezing. "Don't worry, little ones. I'm getting you out of here," he said, carefully cradling the triplets in his arms. He wrapped each baby individually in an emergency blanket, using his own body heat to keep them warm, and then carried them to his ship. As he took a closer look around the colony, the signs of the attack became clearer. Walls pierced by rifle bullets, burn marks from laser fire, and massive claw marks were everywhere. Scattered military gear and heavily armored suits suggested that those defending the colony had put up a desperate fight. A major conflict had occurred here, and the only signs of life left were these 3 tiny alien babies. Before returning to his ship, Axwell took one last look around. Among the wreckage, the corpse of a heavily armored enemy soldier caught his attention. The emblem on the armor belonged to a notorious group of bounty hunters. So, the ones who came here didn't just destroy the colony, he thought. They were searching for something. The fact that the triplets had survived could not have been a mere coincidence. After placing the triplet babies in the ship's medical bay and activating the life support systems, Axwell returned to the cockpit. However, his relief didn't last long. The red lights on the radar screen began flashing rapidly. 3 enemy ships were closing in fast, and the distance was narrowing with each passing second. The ship's AI confirmed the danger, 3 targets detected in close pursuit. Weapon systems are active. Axwell quickly activated the shields and pushed the engines to maximum power. But the enemy ships were likely belonging to bounty hunters, known for their speed and maneuverability. He knew they would catch up with him, but instead of engaging in a direct fight, he needed to come up with a creative solution. As the first enemy ship opened fire, Axwell's vessel shook. Laser shots struck the shields, creating bright explosions around the hull. Axwell swiftly performed a side maneuver, slipping out of the enemy's line of sight and dodging the direct laser fire. He then spun in the opposite direction, trying to circle behind the enemy ships. However, the bounty hunters seemed to anticipate this move, quickly scattering and repositioning themselves to attack from multiple directions. The ship jolted left and right as Axwell locked onto the first ship with his targeting system. "All right, time to stop playing games," he muttered to himself. As the enemy ship closed in, Axwell activated the magnetic mine launcher underneath his own ship. The magnetic mine latched onto the underside of the enemy vessel, and a few seconds later, it detonated, tearing apart the ship's shields. As the damaged ship spun out of control, the 2 remaining ships momentarily lost their formation, giving Axwell an opening. Seizing the opportunity, he accelerated toward the second ship. As soon as it recovered, the enemy fired plasma cannons in return. Axwell's ship quickly veered left, avoiding the incoming plasma blasts. He then activated the laser turrets on the left side of his ship, aiming directly at the second ship's wing. The blast hit its target, causing the enemy ship to ignite, and moments later, it exploded in the vacuum of space. The last remaining ship was still on Axwell's tail. It was clear this one was different from the others, larger and better equipped. Moreover, it coordinated its movements as if controlled remotely. Axwell knew that defeating this ship head-on would be impossible, and he needed to come up with a different strategy. He slowed down for a while, allowing the enemy to get closer. Then, he suddenly reversed direction, throwing off the enemy's aim. The enemy ship lost its position due to Axwell's sudden maneuver and couldn't get a clear shot. Axwell reloaded the plasma cannons on top of his ship and aimed directly at the enemy ship's engines. When the plasma rounds hit the engines, the enemy ship erupted in a massive explosion. Finally, with all threats neutralized, Axwell took a deep breath. But there was no time to celebrate. The triplets' lives were still at risk, and a bigger threat could emerge at any moment. Although the enemy signals on the radar had disappeared, he suspected that the bounty hunter's main ships might be on their way. He quickly adjusted the ship's coordinates and set a course for a safer region. He had survived this assault, but he knew the real danger wasn't over. He needed to find out who had destroyed the colony and who was so desperate to capture these triplets, dead or alive. With a brief sense of relief from escaping the enemy ships, Axwell headed to the medical bay to check on the triplets. The life support systems were stable, but he had a deep feeling that something was wrong. Just as the ship was beginning to heal from the battle, the radar suddenly went off again. This time, it displayed not just a few small ships, but a massive warship accompanied by 4 light escort fighters. Axwell recharged his ship's shields and pushed the engines to maximum capacity. However, this time he faced a more serious enemy. The enemy ship was heavily armored, and its firepower far surpassed that of Axwell's small vessel. The first shot fired from the enormous guns of the enemy warship hit his shields, nearly throwing Axwell from his seat. The ship rocked violently, alarms blaring and red lights flashing all around. Taking a deep breath, Axwell maneuvered his ship quickly. He made a sharp turn in a wide arc to avoid incoming laser and plasma shots. The fireballs exploding around him blurred his visibility. With a few seconds of sharp maneuvering, he positioned himself directly behind the enemy ships and activated his laser cannons, targeting the pursuing escort fighters. He quickly fired, managing to breach the shields of 2 fighters. One lost control and exploded in a deep blast, but the other fighters immediately retaliated. As one of the escort ships closed in on him, Axwell activated the antimatter missiles under his ship and released them directly in front of the enemy vessel. The explosion created a brilliant flash of light in the vacuum of space when the antimatter made contact. Meanwhile, Axwell swiftly turned left to reduce the impact of the heavy fire coming from the enemy warship. However, the large warship was relentless. It was anticipating Axwell's movements and constantly adjusting its position. It seems there's no easy way out of this, he thought. It was time for a more radical move instead of directly attacking the ship. He redirected all remaining energy to his main plasma weapon, focusing on the enemy ship's shields for a powerful plasma blast. When Axwell pressed the fire button, a dense beam of plasma shot from his ship and struck the enemy's shields, creating a massive crack. Noticing the breach, the enemy commander quickly attempted to readjust the shield systems, but Axwell's assault was already underway. He swiftly positioned his ship for another attack and aimed for the warship's power source, which was exposed due to the previous explosion. He fired the plasma cannons once more, this time hitting the target directly, resulting in a massive explosion in the hull of the warship. Seeing the enemy warship begin to burn, Axwell quickly altered his course and opened a corridor for escape. However, 2 escort fighters were still on his tail, and the enemy warship had not been completely destroyed yet. At that moment, he activated the plasma explosives at the rear of his ship for one last maneuver. By pulling the pursuing fighters in closer, he suddenly spun around and fired the explosives he had left behind. The blasts obliterated both escort ships and took down the last remaining shields of the warship. As the enemy warship finally exploded in a massive blast, Axwell took a final glance around. All dangers had passed. Although his ship had sustained serious damage, the triplet babies were safe and alive. Using the interstellar radio system, Axwell sent out an emergency distress signal. This is Captain Axwell. The colony has been defended. There are 3 small survivors. Evacuation and medical assistance are urgently needed, he transmitted his message. After establishing a connection with the rescue ship, Axwell reviewed the medical analyses of the triplets to gather more information about their condition. The biological structures of the babies did not perfectly match any known alien species. Moreover, their genetic makeup showed signs of complex and advanced bioengineering. These findings suggested that the babies were not ordinary alien beings. Rather, they were likely part of a highly significant scientific project. A crew member from the rescue ship informed Axwell, "There are substantial bounties placed on these babies. Many groups are trying to capture them. Some want them for scientific research, while others seek to use them as genetic weapons." This information raised further suspicions about why the colony had been destroyed and why the triplets were the only surviving beings. Axwell began to analyze the data he had to uncover who was after the triplets and what the true plan behind their existence was. The complex engineering within the baby's DNA provided them with accelerated growth capabilities and high adaptability. This meant they could potentially be used as biological weapons or superior genetic entities. Further investigation revealed that the ones responsible for the colony's destruction were mercenaries from the Vexta Empire, a galactic superpower. Vexta had long been working on biological weapon projects and planned to raise the babies as superior soldiers for warfare. As Axwell fought to prevent the triplets from being abducted for this purpose, he was actually defending them against a much larger conspiracy. Instead of directly handing over the babies to the galactic government, Axwell contacted an independent scientific research group. This group had the capacity to ensure that the babies were not exploited and that they would be raised safely. They planned to keep the identities and existence of the triplets hidden so that they would not fall victim to dangerous power plays in the universe in the future. After ensuring the babies were in safe hands, Axwell completely erased their trail. To prevent the babies' biological potential from being misused, he destroyed all records and advised the research group to treat them as ordinary alien children and train them to live normal lives. Thus, the babies gained the opportunity to grow up as ordinary beings instead of being mere scientific projects or biological weapons. Axwell left this adventure with the peace of having fulfilled his duty to uphold galactic justice. This struggle was not only a victory for the three small lives, but also for humanity and the common future of all alien species. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.